Hey, everybody, this is Coach Andy Knapp, and I am excited to have a successful Indiana business owner from with us today. It is one of my mentors, as a matter of fact, Vicki Bohlsen of Bohlsen Group. Bohlsen Group is a full service boutique marketing agency that focuses on helping organizations that use businesses as a force of good. Hi, Vicki.
Hi, Andy. How are you?
Good. Well, let's start with introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about your personal story, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I was born in Indiana, raised here, went to college here, went to DePaul, and then after graduation I moved to New York City and I lived there and kind of lived there and in Indy for about a decade back and forth. Um, so moved back here when I was pregnant with my first kid and have lived here ever since. So started Bohlsen Group after my youngest was entering kindergarten, and I realized they all had the same upbringing. They all got me at home for all those years, and I felt like it was okay to do that from like a personal standpoint, and have been running Bolson Group for 14 years.
Wow, that's amazing. I was so happy when that started because for those of you that don't know, Vicky was my first boss when I was her intern at a place called the Promotion Company, and it was so much fun. But I knew that she was going on to bigger and better things at that time for sure. Uh, Tell us about you kind of touched on it, but tell us how the business came about and at what point you decided that you had the confidence you could run your own business.
Well, like you said, Andy, we worked together, and that was my second job out of college. No, it was my third job out of college because I moved to New York and I worked for CBS Television Network. And that was back in the day when they had headhunters, now that
Oh
would
yeah.
be like a recruiter, but it was really big deal. You'd go to these headhunters and they would kind of assess your career interests and send you out on interviews, and you had nothing to lose because they took their percentage from the company that hired you.
Very
And
good.
I knew I wanted to be in PR, but I didn't know for what kind of company. And they sent me out to talk with PR agencies of different sizes and CBS, an affiliate relations job. And I ultimately decided that it would be awesome to work in TV so I could understand how TV is a part of the public relations, umbrella. And I worked there, and then I moved back to Indy due to my then husband's job, and I worked for a local TV station. And then I segued into the job at the promotion company, which was family entertainment and owned and operated shows. And that was super, super fun. And
Fun.
it was, yeah. And it was during that time that I had been married and working for, 5 to 7-ish years. I can't remember the exact timing, but moved back to New York. And when I was moving back to New York, I also was thinking when I start a family, I want to be home with my kids, but I
Yeah.
also just love what I do. And so how am I going to, merge the two? So I decided I would freelance, I'd be an independent contractor. And I was really blessed to have the television station that I had worked for hire me to do some of the PR things for them. And then I went to our boss, Bruce Hovley, the owner of the company, and I was like, listen, I brought on this new client. I certainly am not going to steal it from you, but I am going to go to them and talk about being their national publicist because I'm moving to New York City and that only makes sense. So I did that. They agreed. And so I moved to New York and I had a few clients in Indy, that client, and I started working with a couple of really awesome companies in Indy that remained clients for the 12 years I was a freelancer, and some are
Great.
still clients today.
That's
Uh,
great.
and then I took a really big gig in New York. I worked for a company called Media Link that was the company that started audio news releases and video
Mm.
news releases. And they had started a satellite media tour division, which, if for those of you who don't know what that is, you don't see a lot of satellite interviews on TV anymore, but when I mean, you do on like the news stations, it's like when the person in the
Hmm.
studio is talking to somebody in a box on your
Yes.
screen. And so they sold and were one of the only producers of satellite media tours. And so that would mean that they would have a celebrity or a spokesperson in the studio and they would book them in a 2 hour window to do like 10 interviews, like Milwaukee,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
whatever. And they had this idea that, hey, when that celebrity or spokesperson is in the limo driving to the studio and leaving it, or as a standalone, they could do radio interviews in the same way. And so I was hired to create that radio media tour division for them. And it was awesome because it was it was a new, tool that publicists could use.
Yeah.
It was exposed to all these just brilliant people at MediaLink. And I worked alongside a really cool team and we got that going. And then I started booking the radio tours and the satellite tours when I moved back to Indy. So it was another client. But what happened was, this is kind of goofy, but funny. I had my first baby and I would get a lot of the high profile like tours to book. So I'd be booking tours for like Sylvester Stallone and like,
Oh,
I mean, I wasn't talking to him, I was talking to his
sure.
people. But you can imagine when you send out that he's available for interview opportunity, and you're booking him in the morning, like the 8 to 10 window, which works
Yes.
for radio stations on all coasts. The phone starts ringing at 3 a.m. and those producers get to the office. So it just started to be really intrusive to my life. And so I kind of eased out of that, so I could have a more manageable life of, working, but raising my family. And did that for about 12 years. And as I said, when my youngest went to kindergarten, it also happened to be during the recession, 2008, 9.
Yes.
And my then husband was in real estate and things were just bad and wacky and scary. And I
Yes.
knew, over those 12 years, I was managing a manageable schedule and I knew there were tons of clients that I could say yes to. And so I started Bohlsen Group. And so really, honestly, I always had the confidence. People always would say, you should just start a company, like hire other people to work alongside you.
Yes.
But I didn't
I
want
was
to
one of them.
I didn't want to do that though. I didn't want that responsibility. And but I really kind of felt like I didn't have much of a choice, And so I thought now's the time. And so that's what I did.
Oh, that's great. That is so great. Tell me a little bit about Bolston Group. I called you an integrated marketing company. Tell me more about what you guys do.
Well, when we started out, we were doing a little bit of everything for everybody. I didn't really have a very good elevator speech or
Yeah.
mission. It was kind of like, what? Here I am. And
Yeah,
we
I
were
know,
doing
I've
a
been
lot.
there.
We were doing
Is
a
it
lot.
marketing? We'll figure it out.
Yeah, yeah, there's all kinds of options there. And I had such a diverse background. I had worked with a lot of nonprofits as a freelancer,
Right.
and also I had continued to work with events and entertainment. So, the family entertainment shows and just entertainers and authors and all this stuff. And so
Yeah.
I had a couple verticals, and we started as Bohlsen PR. And so about a year in, I went to this conference to try to get some direction on how to like really strategically, observe the company and make adjustments that would put us in a better position. And
Yeah.
it was kind of embarrassing, but the guy who was running the conference, he put up my website on the screen and said, this person is basically effed. He was
Oh,
like,
really?
yeah, he was like, you're doing everything for what I just said, which I knew, which was why I was there. And so he was like, you really gotta like get in a lane, you gotta pick, and I was like, gosh, he's really right. And so I then purposefully made three sort of companies. One was the event and entertainment company, one was the
Hmm.
author publicity
Right.
company, one was the other, but the other was still kind of all over the place. And then over the years, there's been shifts and ebbs and flows, but the turning point was really when we became B Corp certified. That happened in 2000. 17, I think it was,
Okay. Okay.
by accident, because a woman that I really admire said, you should be B Corp certified. And she said it because I would talk about what really made me passionate about my job. And it was always the impact work and
Right.
making a difference in people's lives. And I
Yeah.
was so concerned always about my team and making sure that I had a great culture and great benefits for them and was paying them well and they had a work-life balance and all these things. And she's like, you're really focused on corporate social responsibility and CSR. And I was like, CSR. I mean,
Yeah.
now it's like, on everybody's tongues, but you know, almost 10 years ago or 8 years ago, it was kind of just really being introduced. And so
Right.
she said, become B Corp certified. And I'm like, I'm really not a certification kind of gal. It's just not me. And but I still went on and did some research, and B Lab, which does the certification process, has this free assessment tool. Anybody who wants tips on how to have a great CSR program should take this assessment. It is
Good to
amazing.
know.
You go to B Lab, it's right there, easy peasy. And I took the assessment over the course of about 5 months. And because I would answer a question and then I would get so excited about, oh my gosh, what a great idea. Or I'd be like, oh, I'm doing that. And then you'd go to the next skip logic question and it would say, is it in your handbook? And I'd be like, no, but it's going to be. So then I'd pause, do the work, go back. And then the next question would be, is it a company policy? What is it a company policy? Is it in the handbook? Do you train people when you onboard them about this policy? And so like an example would be, do you use local vendors?
Hmm.
And I'd
Hmm.
go and do the work and I'd be like, oh yeah, we use 92% local vendors. The 8% we don't aren't located in Indy,
Yeah.
they,
Yeah.
they're out of San Francisco, so I can't. And so you'd answer that. And then it would be like, well, is that a company policy that you will make local vendors the priority? Of course, let's make it a policy, on and on it went. So at the end of this 5 month period of just soaking up the ideas and the knowledge and making changes, institutionalizing things, we had enough points to be certified.
Cool.
And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I am a company that, like, like Tom and Ben and Jerry's and Tom
Yeah.
Shoes
Right
and
on.
whatever. And I was like, okay. So I got certified. We were the first in Indiana. And this is
Right.
a cool story. It was the same time that our state was, the then governor was putting into legislation that a company in Indiana could become a benefit corporation. So instead of
Okay.
being an LLC, S Corp, Incorp, whatever, you could be a
Right.
benefit.
Right. Right.
And people were like, what's the difference? And so I was getting phone calls and can you go to coffee? And I mean, if I would have answered all that, that's what I would have been doing for a full-time job. So I created these seminars, like a 6-part series, and
Mhm.
said, whenever people would call and say, can we go to coffee? I'd be like, you know, I'm having a seminar. And so
Yeah. That's a great
anyway,
idea.
through that process, helping others, which is part of the whole B Corp philosophy, I just became super passionate about just the whole thing. I started a podcast and it shifted Bohlsen Group. And this is when things really
Okay.
came together. So to go back to your original question, that was the thing that really changed everything. And we decided to even align our mission with the B Corp, tenants, and decided to use business as a force for good. So now today, we only work with organizations that use business as a force for good.
I love
And
it.
it just made everything, I would like to go back to that guy who said I was a mess and be like, how's this for you?
Yeah. How you like me now? Right. I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know it. That before I saw that you had the B Corp certification, I didn't really know anything about it. But because of that, I've continued to like follow it and look at it and find it. I think that's such a neat distinction. Hey, for everybody listening, check out Bohlsen Group in the link in the description and comment on their LinkedIn that you watch their video when it comes out and on my LinkedIn. Um, and hopefully we'll get some positive momentum. Vicky, what was your, if you had to break it down to one, you might have touched on a little bit earlier. What's your biggest learning as a business owner?
Ugh. I would say my biggest thing as a business owner has been that, well, two things come to mind. The first one is that you have to, what they say about being passionate about something and
Mhm.
merging that with your expertise, and I guess the third thing is there needs to be a need. Those three things
Yeah,
can make quite a good business. So
yeah. You got
that's what I've
you.
learned. That's the good thing I've learned. The painful thing I've learned is that nobody cares about your business as much as you. Doesn't matter how good of a team you have.
True.
Doesn't matter how much you care about them. Doesn't matter how much you provide to them. At the end of the day, nobody cares as much as you.
Yeah, that is 100% true, and and, and that can be a hard lesson sometimes. I think because you get everybody on there, and you think you've got, and you oftentimes do. You got everybody, all the right people on the bus, and everyone's in the right seats on the bus, but all of a sudden, there's something else that happens, and you realize that, oh, wow,
Yeah.
this was that I wasn't even considering
Yeah,
that sort
yeah,
of thing.
and that's like a whole other podcast, but yeah,
Yeah,
you need to, as a business owner, it's something that you really need to keep at the back of your mind at all times, because like you said, Andy, even if everything is a well-oiled machine, you have great processes, you have great benefits, you have a great team, at the end of the day, you are responsible and you are in charge, and I'm ultimately responsible for everything that happens, good or bad or ugly. And
yes.
so it's not really anybody's fault but my own if I think that anybody cares as much as I do.
Yeah, I can understand that. Your name's on the building. That's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak.
That's right. I remember Bruce Hubley saying that to us
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
You
I
remember him like saying,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I was like, whatever, I really care about this job. Like, how dare you? And then
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm in his shoes and I'm like, oh, I understand what he was
Uh,
about,
I use all kinds of things that Hubley would say. Sounds like you're chasing dimes around with dollar bills, stuff like that. There's these great one-liners. I'm like, I'm not even sure what that means, but it sounds awesome. I'm going to use it. Oh goodness. So Vicky, what do you attribute the growth of your company to?
Well, I mean, we have really ebbed and flowed over the years,
Sure.
but when we're, I mean, we're in a place right now where I feel like I really know what I personally care about, what I'm passionate about, what is going to be the best way to work with clients. And so, you know, I guess when you say grow, I mean, you kind of just equate that
Oh,
with size. But like
yeah.
if you're talking about evolution,
Oh,
I would
yeah.
say that it is um, it's really refining what matters to, me, and which is the, I guess the passion, right? And then
Right.
it's the expertise of the various things that we offer clients. And that can be industry related, because a lot of our clients are nonprofits, because nonprofits,
Hmm.
let's face it, they're making impact.
Sure.
And so it's the expertise of really understanding them, their threats and opportunities, and then all the ways that their capabilities that they have and don't have. And so how can you really come in and help them and benefit them because you've got so much experience with them. But it can also be the tactics, and the expertise on the tactics. So I think it's those two things kind of coming together.
Good. I like that. I love that's a great answer. What what do you think are some, I mean, you touched on them a little bit before too, but what are some common misperception or misconceptions about running a business?
Uh, um, Well, I think that oftentimes, because there's so much behind the scenes stuff, like that, um, there. I think people don't really understand what a business owner does all day, you
Right.
know? And so uh, that can be that can be what do I how do I say this? It can be lonely sometimes because you're doing these
I hear
things that
that.
somebody else knows how to do or is doing. And you feel sometimes misunderstood because they feel like they're doing all the work, you know, because they just don't see in to what it is you're doing. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah,
So I
totally.
think that's a misperception that some people have. I also feel like there's the misperception that, that a business owner is, loaded. Uh,
Yeah.
you
I hear
know,
that a lot too.
because you own the business doesn't mean, you're loaded and
Right.
or that you're putting yourself first as far
Yeah.
as the cash flow goes, because
Yeah.
yeah, there are times when we have been in an ebb and I'm not thinking about myself. I'm thinking about making sure everybody else is taken care of. And
Right.
so, there are times when you have to make major sacrifices. Um, Fortunately, that's, you wouldn't stay in business if that's how it was all the time.
Sure.
But definitely it happens and
Yeah.
it's tricky and it's scary and it's lonely. So I think those are the misperceptions that I
That's
think people have about people owning a business. And that's more personal, but I'm a more emotional person. Which I was also told by Bruce Fellowby, but I am more of a feeler and a relationship
for
person. And
sure.
so I think that's what comes to mind first for me, because that's what makes my business successful, is that emotionality and connection with the people I work with and I work for.
That's a great answer. I always try to liken that to like an iceberg. We see 10% of the iceberg with the naked eye, but there's 90% of it's underneath, and people aren't privy to seeing all of that thing, the entire
Yeah,
basis of the iceberg. They just see the iceberg and think, oh, that's it.
yeah.
Not to liken business to an iceberg, but
Yeah. Well, you know what somebody told me the other day? I
what's
was like,
that?
oh my gosh. Somebody said, you have 80,000 thoughts a day and 90% of them are negative. And I was like, oh my God, that sucks. And wow, we have 80,000 thoughts a day and 90% of them are negative.
It's a lot.
That's a,
That's
that's,
crazy.
that's a little frightening actually. So that means
That's very frightening.
I've had about 5,000 thoughts since we started, Andy.
Hopefully they're not negative, all or 80% of them aren't.
I told my daughter that and she was like, "Oh my God." And so then I had to like calm her down and tell her a few things she
Right.
could do to like kind of try to combat that. Uh,
And then it just spawns more negative thoughts in your head. Like, why do I do this to myself? What am I doing? God, I hate myself.
yeah, exactly.
So, Vicky, as you think about, we're talking a little bit about the evolution of your business. If you looked at the next, look, 1 to 3 years, what do you think your number one development or challenge will be to achieve your goals and whatever goals those are?
Wow, you're asking me that at a really good time. I'm nearing 60 and my last one's in college. And so life's going to be able to change for me quite a bit in the next couple of years. I mean, I mean, obviously it could change for me now because all my kids are living outside of my home.
Feel the
I
same way.
I'm single, so I am responsible for myself. So the world is my oyster. And I've thought about moving someplace else. You know, COVID was great for realizing that you can, run a business remotely very
Yeah.
easily. I mean, we were kind of a step ahead of that because we already had work from home days,
Right,
which
right.
was, really cool. But so it made it easy for us to shift to work from home. And then after COVID, people still wanted to be somewhat remote.
Yeah.
So we're hybrid, but um I don't know. I think honestly, my goals are to figure out how to still make an impact, but also self-focus. a little more.
That's great.
You know, it's I think I deserve that, and I desire that. And so what does that look like? You know, what
Absolutely.
I don't think that the clients I serve or that kind of thing is going to shift, but maybe there's going to be a shift in how work is delivered.
Yeah,
And so that's kind of like the 1 to 3 year goal, like what's on my mind right now.
that's great. That's exactly right. One of the areas that we work with people, and we always talk about, we work with companies in the areas, team, money, vis-a-vis marketing, and time. And people, when they hear time, they think about, well, okay, how is the people in my organization, how am I allotting their time? Yeah, that's one part of it, but another part is you. You got to figure out how you can have this rich, full life and not have it running the business be at the expense of something else. And that's something that it's interesting. The different types of people that own businesses, and I get to talk to business owners all the time, where they kind of realize one way or another that, like, wow, this didn't happen really because I was focusing on this, and this has been really successful, but it's been at the expense of this. And I guess that's what life is, right? We got to make the choices that make things worth the best.
Yeah,
Um, Hey, the
absolutely.
last question I have for you is, what advice would you have for a new business owner, somebody that's just starting a business?
Oh gosh, I think that to recognize and accept that you can't do everything and be comfortable outsourcing to the appropriate people who are experts in the areas, and don't try to do it all yourself. We
Yes.
use a PEO, and they do our payroll, they do our benefits, they will help us with HR in various capacities if we need them to. Like IT, if you're not a marketing firm, the marketing, you know,
Yeah, right,
um,
right, right.
just don't try to do it all. And if you have a passion about learning something that needs to be done yeah, jump in, lean in
Sure.
and learn it, but don't feel like you have to do it all.
There's things that can be outsourced. And as a business owner, if you have $1 million business, your time equates to, your value to the company is approximately $500 an hour. If there's things that you're doing
Yep.
that you could get done for less than $500 an hour, and you're $1 million company, maybe you should look at some options on how to get that done in a little bit better way. Plus, you touched on it a little bit earlier. You said when people look at the business, they think, they're it's all about you. They don't understand that as a business owner, you work in your business, but you have to also work on your business. You have to set the course for the business and understand that. And that takes time. And it's not just a chore. That helps you to have to get in the right place mentally, to figure it out, take an assessment of things. And a lot of people just end up miring themselves in a particular thing, that a particular activity that they like to do, and they kind of miss out on that. So
Mhm.
that's awesome. Vicki, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you being on my little podcast here. You're one of my favorite people, and you
Oh,
are a mentor of mine. And I just want to thank you so much.
thank you. It was so fun.